Donald Trump makes gauging Puerto Rico bondholder losses even harder in future. Puerto Rico bondholders were already struggling to gauge how much they'd be repaid once the island finishes with its record-setting bankruptcy. Then President Donald Trump got involved. The price of Puerto Rico bonds tumbled to a record low Wednesday after Trump said the beleaguered territory's debt would need to be wiped out as it reels from Hurricane Maria's devastation, seemingly endorsing a type of debt relief unprecedented in American history. Puerto Rico's general obligation bonds due in 2035, the most frequently traded securities, fell to as little as 30 cents on the dollar, down from an average of 46 cents a day earlier, as investors and traders tried to parse whether the president wanted to, or even could, forgive what sold outright. Those bonds ended the day around 38 cents, after the White House budget director said not to take Trump too literally. Still, some on Wall Street said his remarks could encourage Puerto Rico to push for deeper concessions in court. This strengthens their position to haircut this debt even further, said Nicholas Venditti, a portfolio manager with Thornburgh Investment Management, who was inundated with emails about Trump's comments. Municipal bankruptcies are extremely rare, so even initially it was difficult for investors to handicap what the outcome would be as various bondholders stake rival claims on the island's cash. The hurricane has made such forecasting harder by leaving billions of dollars of damage and causing the economy there to grind to a halt. Thornburgh, which doesn't own Puerto Rico bonds, reckons recovery rates will be terrible, less than even Wednesday's rout suggests. Venditti said he thinks general obligation bonds, which have the highest claim on the central government's revenue, will be worth around 20 cents on the dollar. Not all investors were quite so pessimistic. David Tall, president and co-founder of the Magdalene Capital LP, which once held Puerto Rico debt, said the president's comments pushed the bonds closer to their proper value by scaring off investors who had been hanging in there, hoping to recoup some of what they've already lost. The very important point is weak hands giving up, he said. I don't think today's comments changed anything substantively. There are investors however who rode this thing all the way down into distressed territory who were in over their heads, he said. These statements have shaken those weak hands and now this investment may be priced righter and may be getting into the right hands. The market has learned not to take Trump too literally, which is why prices bounced back somewhat, according to Trit Nguyen, managing director at New Oak Fundamental Credit. He thinks recovery rates on the general obligation bonds will be around 30 cents on the dollar, though he said it's possible the securities could trade in the 20-cent range before it's over. It is kind of hard to be shocked by anything he says anymore, he said, adding that the comments were not that surprising considering the president's previous use of bankruptcy in his business career. He has never shown a lot of sympathy for creditors. There are too many different moving targets to accurately predict recovery rates now, said Otto Montero Salazar, director of credit analysis for Everglass & Company, which owns insured Puerto Rico sales tax-backed bonds. Hurricane Maria changed everything, he said, in response to the video footage of President Donald Trump tossing rolls of paper towels to Puerto Ricans who survived Hurricane Maria. Former Rep. John Dingell of Michigan tweeted, "Heck of a job, Bronny. Words can't convey how upset I am that I didn't come up with that joke. I'd been thinking about how Trump's praise of his administration's response to Maria is reminiscent of George W. Bush praising his FEMA director Michael Brown. But Dingell gets a tip of the hat for making that connection in the most hilarious way possible. We should admit, though, that we're only laughing at Trump's words and actions in Puerto Rico because we're not one of the people suffering from lack of electricity or food or water. If we lived on the island of Puerto Rico, we'd probably be screaming mad at the president's inability to demonstrate empathy or a basic level of concern for those who are suffering." Trump came to Puerto Rico like an emperor, with pomp and little sympathy, Suzanne Ramirez de Arellano wrote Wednesday for The Guardian. The writer is a former news director for Univision in Puerto Rico. Trump arrived on the island more than 2 weeks after Hurricane Maria hit, Ramirez writes. Despite what he claims, the situation is still devastating. Only 5% of the electrical grid has been repaired, Only 17% of the cell phone towers are working and more than half the island has no running water. Most of Puerto Rico's 3.5 million citizens have to stand every day in hellish lines for food, water, gas and medicines. This is the new normal for us and our families. Yet, Ramirez writes, the president spent much of his time on the island patting his administration on the back for how well it is handling everything. Ramirez wonders why one of his appearances on the island was billed as a press conference when he didn't take any questions. He used the opportunity to praise the people in his administration who he says have done great work. He reserved nothing, not one word of encouragement and empathy for the Puerto Rican people, who are the ones that have shouldered the brunt of this tragedy all by themselves. The writer seems particularly disturbed that Trump visited Puerto Ricans who live in a gated community. It was to them that Trump tossed paper towels and bags of rice, Ramirez says. Even in forgotten, neglected Puerto Rico, Trump reminds us that there is a pecking order, and it's the rich and powerful living in gated communities who come before all others. We can assume that the word emperor in Ramirez's headline was deliberately chosen. Nobody expects an emperor to show concern for the little people, but a president is supposed to be different. A president is supposed to demonstrate in moments like that he's a human being whose heart breaks to see other human beings suffering. Trump has demonstrated time and again that he lacks that ability. Puerto Rico may be the worst demonstration yet.